I often take back roads instead of highways and interstates whenever I have the choice. For me, I prefer the two-lane roads and the rolling hills and open fields and beautiful old barns. There's a sense of timelessness that I feel as I travel these country roads in Appalachia. Now, it might be just my imagination, but it seems my heart rate is more relaxed and the stresses of the modern world just seem to fade away. If only just for a moment, as I travel 40 miles an hour, seemingly alone on these isolated roads. I often find myself imagining the history of the old buildings that are scattered throughout these rural areas in the Appalachian Mountains, far removed from the fast pace of suburban and urban life. Recently, I saw a picture taken from the road of an abandoned one-room schoolhouse named Island View School, sitting in the middle of a cow pasture in the foothills of the Smoky Mountains National Park. It had over 1,000 likes on social media and hundreds of comments from folks all over the world wondering what its history was. Many folks said they drove by it every day or they lived down the road from it, but yet most of them didn't know the history or how or when it got there. So I started researching. I found dozens of paintings of the school and hundreds of photos. Yet, there was something inside of me that needed to know what the story of the school was. And before long, I had located the owner of the cow pasture and I reached out to him. Now, out of respect to his privacy, I'll just call him by his first name, John. I explained to John that I love sharing the history of these Appalachian mountains with a dedicated core of people on this YouTube channel who are just as passionate about learning and preserving our history as I am. John agreed to grant access to me to film this historic building and to share its rich history with me. So with that, here's the complete story of the Island View Schoolhouse. Our story begins in 1895. That's when 2 acres of land was purchased for $34 to build this school for children in this rural area. The name of this school was Cowan School. This modest school stood until early one morning in 1917. That's when a little girl named Pauline Lau woke up in her bed after a large commotion to find that she was soaking wet. She quickly yelled out to her father, "Dad, come quick, it's raining in my room." Indeed, the roof had been blown off the house by a tornado, and once the storm passed, they quickly realized that the school had been completely destroyed by the tornado. So, the community set out to build a new school, one much nicer than the one destroyed by the storm. So they secured $558.92 to build the Island View School in 1917. Oh, this school was amazing. A one-room schoolhouse that housed grades 1 through 8, all in the same room. It contained all the conveniences of modern life. It had a wood stove heater, a separate boys and girls outhouse, and separate areas to store their coats and their books. Heck, it even had a handmade chalkboard that was made with the paint from the ashes of Irish potatoes mixed with water. They dug a 12-foot well next to the schoolhouse with a pump for the kids to wash their hands and to drink their water. The crown jewel of this school was the bell sitting high above the roof line to call the children to school each day. Yes, sir, this was a fine educational establishment. It had a school principal, a teacher, and a janitor. Oh, well, I mean one teacher did all 3 jobs at the same time. The community chose the name Island View School since there was a huge hill behind the schoolhouse where you could see an island sitting in the middle of the French Broad River, located nearly a half-mile away. Kids walked, rode horses, or carpooled in wagons each day to the school. The school year was always centered around the crop season, and the classes were always canceled during harvest season so the kids could help in the fields. Indeed, these were good times at Island View School. However, in the late 1940s, Another local school burned down and students were forced to move into Island View while a new school was built. So you see, they just put a curtain right down the middle of the class at Island View and made 2 classrooms. Once the new school was built, it was called Boyds Creek School, and all of the students from Island View were bused there. And just like that, the walls of Island View School that were once filled with the sounds of children went silent. The building sat abandoned in the middle of a cow pasture for the next 55 years, slowly falling in on itself. The rear wall collapsed and the cows began just walking right inside of the school and chewing holes in the blackboards. Heck, the school was even used to store bales of hay. And the small sassafras tree that had been planted in front of the school decades ago by school children began growing into the building. Indeed, the building was nearly lost to time. Now, hold on now, that's not the end of the story. Oh yeah, you remember the little girl back at the beginning of the story that woke up after the tornado and it was raining in her room back in 1917? You know, Pauline Lyle? Well, you see, 90 years later, in 2007, her son, Sam Lyle, and her son-in-law, John, began restoring this building, and together, they saved the historic Island View School from the hands of time. That's right, the same man who was gracious enough to share the story of the school with me is one of the very men who saved the school. Since then, they've held reunions with many of the original Island View School children visiting the school. There's even an upcoming Hollywood movie, Marbles and Bullets, that was filmed inside of the school. Every time the owner opens the gate to the pasture to check on his cows or visit the school, folks stop along the road wanting to take a closer look at this beautiful Appalachian schoolhouse. So, if you ever find yourself riding the back roads along Boyds Creek Road in the foothills of the Smoky Mountains, you'll see this beautiful one-room schoolhouse standing in the middle of the pasture, sitting silently. Take a moment and ponder, what would these walls say if they could talk? Would they tell stories of a stern teacher? Or would they tell stories of silly school children, stories of lost homework, and lifelong friendships that were made within these walls? If you listen closely enough, would you hear the sounds of children playing and giggles echoing through the wind? Can you still hear the ringing of the bell, signaling the beginning of a new school day? And that, my friends, is the true history of the Island View Schoolhouse. I'm glad I took time to stop and learn this history before it was forever lost to time.